Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm Katie Helper.
And I'm Mary Matte. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. This week, it's tariff time. We're talking about this terrifying time, if I may say.
Ooh, that's good.
How about that for a pun? With Professor Richard Wolff. He's our guest. He'll be breaking down the back and forth when it comes to Trump's tariffs and all the crazy things that are happening there.
And it's a terrific interview, if we do say so ourselves.
It is a terrific interview. Yes, it is terrific. Yes.
Stop. Tariff time. Dun, 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 dun. Can't tariff this. And that's another musical edition of the Useful Idiots. And that, for people who are too young to know what that is, that's an MC Hammer song. Mm-hmm. Should we get to the 4 basic food groups?
Yes. What do we have for Democrats Suck?
For Democrats Suck, we have a story involving friend of show, Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. And he wrote a Twitter post in response to some very disturbing news, which is that 2 students, 5 recent grads from Carnegie Mellon University, have visas revoked. And that, of course, is terrible news. And the good thing is that Fetterman did react to that, and he tweeted out to that news. My team and I were just made aware of this, and we are looking into how best to resolve. When we have updates, we will share. Now, that's great. The problem is that it's totally hypocritical, because while he claims to have a concern with the kind of like attacks on free speech and the fascistic turn that this country is taking when it comes to just rounding people up or revoking their immigration, that's not what he usually says. Here's how he responded to the arrest and detention of Palestinian student, Columbia student Mahmoud Khalil. The Senate Judiciary Democrats said, "Free Mahmoud Khalil." He responded, "Free all the hostages who have been tortured, starved, raped, beaten, and still in tunnels in Gaza by Hamas since October 7, 2023. Now, that's not really related to the freedom of Mahmoud Khalil. That's just an example of him being terrible on Israel and basically being a senator of Israel instead of the United States. And it's like the but Hamas response that we see often to things, whether it's like, truthful evidence of Israel engaging in genocide, or in this case, the United States illegally, extrajudicially kidnapping someone over their speech and beliefs. Now, it's actually worse than this, because he didn't just tweet that. He also has met with Ross Glick, who is from Betar, this really scary organization that has done things like handed Norman Finkelstein a pager in reference to, the pager explosion that Israel did with Hezbollah. Betar is this extremely right-wing organization that doxes people, doxes pro-Palestine protesters, and turns over their information to the U.S. government. So let's take a look at this tweet. Ross Glick, a pro-Israel activist who previously shared a list of campus protesters with federal immigration authorities, said that he was in Washington, D.C. for meetings with members of Congress during the Barnard Library demonstration and discussed Khalil with aides to Senators Ted Cruz and John Fetterman, who promised to escalate the issue. That's just an example of Fetterman sucking, basically. And, obviously it was embarrassing enough and hypocritical enough that he had to delete his tweet where he was pushing back on a Defend Khalil tweet. So that's just your Democrats being absolutely terrible. And he's just such a cuck for Israel and has received $370,171 in donations from AIPAC.
And all this is happening as Israel is continuing to carry out massacre after massacre inside Gaza, which of course John Fetterman and most other Democrats support. Israel is imposing, and this just doesn't even get covered anymore, but a full-on siege of Gaza. They haven't let any aid in now for many weeks, which is the most flagrant war crime you can think of, just collective punishment against a besieged civilian population. And what just happened last week in the Senate, Bernie Sanders had this measure to block arms to Israel, and only 15 Democrats voted in favor. Every other Democrat and every Republican, including Rand Paul, who's supposed to be like a anti-war Republican, they all voted to continue arming Israel. So we have complete bipartisan subservience to Israeli genocide.
Right.
And John Fetterman loves to broadcast it. He loves to
Right.
advertise what an Israel supporter he is, but he has many, many contemporaries.
Yeah, and here, by the way, is a photo of Fetterman, because as you said, what makes him kind of unique, Aaron, is that he broadcasts what a cuck he is for Israel. Other Democrats kind of keep it more under wraps or are a little bit more measured in their praise of Israel. But here you have Fetterman meeting with Ross Glick, who was the director of the U.S. chapter of Betar. And to be fair to Ross Glick, he's not just a doxer and harasser of people who are critical of Palestine. In fact, there's really funny footage of him trying to harass Grace Belton from the TrueAnon podcast, but he just comes off looking like a weirdo. But he also harasses people in his life, including romantic partners. So reading at the New York Post, when a Manhattan CEO logged onto her company's Instagram account last February and saw a nude photo of herself, she panicked. The 39-year-old exec hastily deleted it, but within moments, the image was reposted. Then it was on her company's website and soon her personal Facebook page. Over the next month and a half, no matter how many times she changed her passwords, nude photos of her began popping up on her other social media accounts and even made it onto her company's Twitter page. Quote, "I'm a single mom living in New York City. I'm a business owner. What did they want from me? What's next?" The woman who asked not to be identified told the Post. It turned out that the accused culprit was the woman's 49-year-old ex-boyfriend, Ross Glick. And thanks to New York City's new revenge porn law, the former beau was arrested. So there you have it. Ross is really a well-rounded man.
You listen to Useful Idiots, which probably means you're pretty skeptical of the trustworthiness we've always been told is the cornerstone of corporate media. It's no surprise these aren't democratic institutions or journalistic endeavors. They're capitalistic businesses tied to driving shareholder value. In the tools we use every day, like Google, X, TikTok, and Facebook, we're not the customer, we're the product, being bought and sold to the highest advertising bidder and at the whim of their latest algorithm's decision on what news we should be seeing. Thankfully, we found a news platform that doesn't use manipulative algorithms to send you down a rabbit hole. It's Ground News, an app and website that gathers news articles from across the world in one place and shows context about the publication's political leaning, reliability, and ownership, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. Here's an example. You can use Ground News to compare reporting on the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Just search the topic and their platform will show you how each publication, from left to right to center, reports or hides Israel's repeated attacks that broke the agreement. Try it out today. Go to groundnews.com/useful today to get 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan and get access to all their news analysis features. That's groundnews.com for 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan for a limited time only. groundnews.com/useful. All right, for Republicans suck, let's turn to Donald Trump. Now, he sat down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House and said a lot of things. We cover this in the Thursday Throwdown, totally revisionist, malicious lies about Palestine, saying that basically Israel owned Gaza once and then shouldn't have given it up. So he was arguing that Israeli ultra-extremists were right, that Israel should have kept its illegal settlers in Gaza all along, and talked about creating a freedom zone there in Gaza, which means ethnic cleansing. Anyway, but he also made an announcement about the Pentagon, which he is very excited about. And here it is.
We have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion. And nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military.
We're very cost conscious, okay? We have DOGE going on where we're slashing jobs. We're going after Medicare, Social Security. We're very cost conscious, but we're going to decide to give $1 trillion to the Pentagon, which has failed audit after audit. But we're so cost conscious Don't worry, I'm sure every dollar will be accounted for. Not only is this flagrantly hypocritical when it comes to, Trump's stated aim to like cut wasteful government spending, it's also a complete betrayal of his constant talk about how I'm the guy who wants to stop endless war and the military industrial complex doesn't like me because I don't want to send people off to die. In fact, just not too long ago, back in February, shortly after he took office, he was talking about cutting the military budget in half.
First meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia, and I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half. And we can do that. And I think we'll be able to do it.
So he goes from saying, yeah, I want to cut the military budget in half, and we're going to work it out with Russia and China, to saying, you know what? Actually, we're going to spend $1 trillion on the Pentagon, and this is the Pentagon's biggest budget ever. And look how excited Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is about Trump's new announcement. Thank you, Mr. President. Coming soon, the first $1 trillion Pentagon budget. President Donald Trump is rebuilding our military, and fast. P.S. We intend to spend every taxpayer dollar wisely on lethality and readiness. So don't worry, everybody. Every single dollar in that $1 trillion will be spent wisely. So don't worry about it. Give us and the military industrial complex $1 trillion and everything will be fine. Even though, again, the Pentagon has failed audit after audit. And even though Trump has just said he wanted to cut that military budget in half. Well, now he's bragging about raising it to its highest level ever.
And that's why, of course, Pete Hegseth calls Trump strategically unpredictable.
Well, given Trump's record in his first term, I think it was predictable that he would betray this promise as well. I mean, this is what he does. He talks a good game. He talks about being anti-intervention. He criticizes Joe Biden for bombing Yemen. But what does he do when he gets in office? He bombs Yemen. Right. He talks about ending the war in the Middle East. What does he do? He gives Israel a green light to continue carrying out mass murder. He talks about supporting free speech, setting up the censorship. And what does he do? He imposes an even more draconian censorship regime than the Democrats had when Joe Biden was in office by literally deporting people if they criticize Israel. So on issue after issue, Trump has broken his promises. And so it's no surprise that he did this as well when it comes to the military budget.
I guess the predictable thing about Trump is that he will be so unpredictable or so inconsistent. But as I've argued many times before, he really has a get out of jail free card, unlike basically every other elected politician, because it's kind of built into his brand that he's not like hamstrung by any ideology or consistency. So his fans are fine with it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like many people inside his movement don't want this. They don't want bigger military budgets. I mean, it's not as if all of MAGA is like anti-war, but there's a sizable contingent. They were drawn to him actually calling out the Democrats for things like military interventions abroad, like in Libya and Syria and Iraq as well, which Hillary Clinton, who he first ran against, supported. They were drawn to that. But what does he do in office? He just completely forgets all that. And just as he talks about how like America first, but then does everything possible to enable Israel and even deport people who criticize Israel. I guess people just accept that. And there's not really a genuine grassroots uprising in his movement because they are operating sort of as a cult of personality. Right. And with Democrats also not offering much of an opposition, it makes everybody very, very passive. And Trump gets to get away with betraying his own promises.
And again, it just gets to be filed under like Trump, he's a maverick. He does what he wants. So, yeah, which is why when the Democrats try to point out that he's a hypocrite or inconsistent, it's just like basically a waste. What Democrats should be showing is why he's bad for workers, American workers, basically. I think that's the only thing that will matter to part of his base. And then the irony is the other part of his base, like the Bill Ackman type of people, they're getting mad at him. And that's why one of the reasons probably that he reversed the tariff decision.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this was on Fox News, and we covered this in this week's Thursday Throwdown, where, it was the bond market. It was Japan dumping U.S. bonds and Trump's Wall Street friends freaking out. That's what got him to back down, of course. That's who he serves, obviously.
Well, let's move on to Isn't That Weird? And now, full disclosure, this weird is kind of like a combination weird and terrible. So there was a pro-Palestine protest on Monday in New York City. While people were protesting, something weird was dropped from the skies. Now let's take a look. I want to keep you guys in suspense.
Looks like someone is dropping ice or water or something from their balcony.
Okay, so for people who are just watching, we see a man standing on his balcony, on his terrace, holding a huge Israeli flag sign.
Dude, shit out the fucking window.
Okay, so that man holding that sign on the terrace had thrown objects that were later identified as bleach, so not ice or water, bleach and feces. And the feces were in a bag. It probably was dog poo. And he threw them from his terrace. And it landed, luckily, on a car. As you can see here, the feces bag exploded and actually shattered the windshield. So that shows you kind of like the force that it had. And that would have been very unpleasant if it had landed on a person. And it actually counts as assault. And that footage was provided by Status Quo and their new reporter, Ashley Bishop. So that was at the Summit New York City luxury apartment. So Summit building, it would be great if they identified who this person was. Now, what's weird about it, and in some ways it's weird, but some ways it's typical. Aaron, guess what the police did? Do you think that they went up and looked into who this person was and what he was doing to stop him or question him or arrest him?
Based on how the police also acted at Columbia when some Israelis there basically used a toxic chemical against students and the police did nothing, I'm going to guess no.
Right. In fact, the police did nothing. And you know what happened is when they tried to discipline those students who had sprayed this chemical substance at other students, that student sued Columbia and won a large settlement. So the person punished were the students who had to go to the hospital, and their crime, of course, was being pro-Palestine. So this other Columbia student decided it was appropriate to spray them with chemicals, and he got money for it, basically. So he made a profit. But what's extra interesting is that far from doing anything about that man on the terrace, they arrested some of the protesters. So that's also should be weird, but it's sadly typical. Now, let's take a look at this guy because they've been trying to identify him. This is the person who threw the dog shit and the bleach from the terrace. So some people on Twitter have claimed to have found his identity. I don't think the person they put out is him. The person that they're saying is him has a different hairline, like he has a widow's peak. This guy doesn't. Now, the other person with the widow's peak is disgusting. He just happens to, I think, not be the disgusting person who engaged in the assault on Monday.
They have complete impunity in Gaza to carry out mass murder. So it makes sense that Israel supporters have total impunity to attack people here who happen to challenge Israel's genocide.
And also, I don't like that he probably caused a dog to be an accomplice. I'm sure the dog did not consent to that. We've all set health goals, lose weight, exercise more, eat better, but without a plan, they often fade. That's where Prolon comes in. It's a 5-day fast mimicking diet that gives you a science-backed, structured approach to stay on track and see real results. And now they're upping their game with the new Next Gen 5-day program, delivering the same science-backed benefits in a cleaner, more convenient, and more flavorful format. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state, triggering cellular rejuvenation and renewal. When you're craving a real reset, check out the Prolon Nutrition Program. It's convenient, backed by Nobel-winning science, and it works. And with Next Gen, it fits seamlessly into your lifestyle. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at a special discount. Prolon is offering Useful Idiots listeners 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/useful. That's PROLONLIFE.com/useful to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/useful.
Let's turn to Isn't That Terrible? And the latest announcement from the Trump administration about how they're cracking down on people who happen to criticize Israel. Well, According to the Department of Homeland Security, now people's social media is going to be perused by the government to see if you've ever criticized Israel. Here's the announcement from DHS. DHS to begin screening alien social media activity for anti-Semitism. And what this basically says is that now, if you apply to be a student in the U.S., you want a student visa or for a green card, that a government is going to look at your social media and see if you've engaged in what it calls anti-Semitism. And they define this as, targeting Jewish people, support for Hamas or terrorism. Then they also say other anti-Semitic activity. And we know what they mean by anti-Semitic activity. They mean criticizing Israel. So
Right.
this will be the new reality, where if you want to come into the U.S., you better not have criticized a foreign country, Israel, or else you can't come in. That is the government's latest announcement. And here is a reaction from an attorney, a civil liberties attorney named Janine Younes. She's Palestinian, but also she challenged Democrats when they were engaged in censorship during the Biden era and she also challenged COVID-19 vaccine mandates. So she's been consistent when it comes to civil liberties and censorship. So here she is now criticizing what Trump is doing. And this is what she says. As of today, DHS making it official policy to surveil social media for, quote, anti-Semitic sentiment and deport non-citizens accordingly. Keep in mind that the Trump administration has redefined anti-Semitism to include criticism of Israel and Zionism. But anyway, true anti-Semitic speech, just like racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, and Islamophobic speech, is First Amendment protected. The government should have no role in policing social media for such speech and punishing the speakers. This is not restoring free speech and ending federal censorship per an executive order that Trump recently signed. That's right. Trump recently signed an executive order about restoring free speech. Well, here he is cracking down on free speech by saying that if you criticize Israel and we find you on your social media doing that, we might not let you into the country and might even deport you, as they're currently doing to Mahmoud Khalil and many other students in the U.S.
Really, just so embarrassing. I mean, it's just such rank hypocrisy. It really is. There's like that expression, PEP, progressive except on Palestine. So what we see with Trump is, I guess, what free speech except for Palestine. So FEP or ASAP, anti-censorship except on Palestine. Yeah,
except I'm sure there's many other things that they want to censor people for, including maybe criticizing Donald Trump. Maybe that's next. Like if you want to come into the U.S. and if we find you've criticized our dear leader, sorry, no dice.
And also, like claiming that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic is just such a dangerous thing to do, in my opinion, because you have like something like the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, right? Now that is anti-Semitism. So I think that it becomes easier and easier for people to dismiss actual anti-Semitism when Israel and Israel defenders are constantly conflating anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel.
And those have been your 4 basic food groups.
We are so excited to be joined by economist Richard Wolff. He's the host of Economic Update. He's a professor of economics emeritus at UMass Amherst, visiting professor at the New School, and the founder of Democracy at Work.
And we are going to talk to Richard Wolff about tariff time. It's tariff turmoil in the U.S. with Trump announcing tariffs and then walking them back and then still keeping them on China. So Richard Wolff is going to help us make sense of it. And he has a perspective that you don't really get in corporate media. The corporate media response is basically, Wall Street doesn't like this, so therefore this is bad. Well, Richard Wolff is saying this is bad because it doesn't help workers. And if Trump actually wanted to help workers, there are tangible steps he could take. And that starts with not imposing tariffs just to fund his tax cuts for the ultra wealthy, but carrying out policies that are actually geared towards helping workers. Imagine that. So let's go to Richard Wolff. Richard Wolff, thanks so much for joining us once again.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
I want to get your response to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who just gave a speech saying that, sorry, Wall Street, we know you're upset about these tariffs. Yes, the market is tumbling, but too bad. It's not your turn. This is the era of Main Street.
For the last 4 decades, basically since I began my career in Wall Street has grown wealthier than ever before, and it can continue to grow and do well. But for the next 4 years, the Trump agenda is focused on Main Street. It's Main Street's turn. It's Main Street's turn to hire workers. It's Main Street's turn to drive investment. And it's Main Street's turn to restore the American dream.
So this is the Trump administration's message now that, yeah, the stock market has taken a huge hit, but that's because we're focused on restoring Main Street. How do you respond to that?
Well, I respond to it the same way I respond to other, to me, to be honest, preposterous efforts to disguise a reality by some BS of that sort. It's like saying that we're imposing tariffs on the world because they've been cheating us for 20 years. I mean, it's the same level of make-believe, as if the last 20 years were not a time of the United States making enormous amounts of money off the rest of the world, never, ever forgetting who's number one, that Mr. Trump is making America number one again. This is all advertising noise. It has nothing to do with anything. The reason that Wall Street is yelling is that they don't want to be pinched. They're perfectly happy to have Mr. Trump do most of the things he wants to do. They're good for them, and they're happy. That's why they supported him. That's why they continue to support him. But they don't want to pay even this much of a fee for the benefits. I'm going to give you an example. One of the top priorities of the current administration is to deal with the leftover garbage of the last administration. When Mr. Trump was president the first time, the only basic economic achievement was the tax cut of 2017, an enormous tax cut given to corporations and the rich. They got the lion's share of it at a time when, economically speaking, it was unnecessary. The 30 years before 2017 were an enormous and unprecedented redistribution of wealth and income from the bottom and the middle to the top. If ever you didn't need a tax cut for those people, it was then. They were already doing it was just larding on to get Mr. Trump the support of the people who put him in office, which it helped to do, and it helped to create the basis for him to win the next time. The problem with that bill is that the only opposition to it that the Democrats could achieve was a sunset. It would expire this year, 2025, December 31st, if I understand the legislation. And so Mr. Trump has an urgent need, which all of Wall Street understands. That tax cut has to be renewed, because if it weren't, then at the end of this year, corporations and the rich would have a tax increase as we go back to the way it was before they got the decrease in 2017. That he can't allow happen because they would all blame him for that. Here you have control of both houses. You better get that renewed. He has promised to do that. He has told Wall Street repeatedly he will take care of it and get them some additional tax cuts on top of that. That's actually what he's proposed. So that's what he's about to do. And the major way he thinks he can do that is by savaging public employment through all the firings there, which we can talk about, and by income from tariffs. I want people to understand this means that the Republican Party, which for 100 years has branded itself the anti-tax party, has overnight become the mammoth tax imposing, because a tariff is just a tax. And so what they're achieving is huge increase in taxes and firing large numbers of public employees. It's an old Republican business employer's dream being actually achieved in real time. But that's what it's about. The Main Street, Wall Street nonsense is pure fluff and shouldn't detract anyone from the underlying reality.
So I just really want to underline this for people. You're saying that despite all the rhetoric from Trump that this is about restoring American manufacturing, you think it has nothing to do with that. This is about him basically trying to find a way to justify his continued tax cuts for the ultra wealthy.
Well, I don't want to go so far. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable for him to say, I want to bring back manufacturing. I would remind folks who don't pay the kind of attention I have to because of my job. Every one of the last 10 presidencies have been led by Obama, Bush, Clinton, it doesn't matter, have all said at the beginning of their reign, usually in their campaigns, they're going to bring back manufacturing. This is as old as Methuselah, this promise. And the interesting thing about all of them is not a single one ever delivered that. The line of manufacturing as a share of the American economy is a line that keeps going down. And that's the reality. So, yeah, he's going to say it too, because it has become a mantra. And he has to say it more because that's who Trump is. He does what all the old Republicans did, but he does it more. The old Republicans quietly okayed white supremacy. He enthuses about it. The other ones were against abortion. He's going to do more. You can see it's steroids. He's on steroids with all this stuff. But that's all it is. It isn't new. It's just hyped up version of all of that. Would he like to bring manufacturing back? Absolutely. And the people who advise him, some of whom I know, economists, are telling him that the American economy is in such deep trouble that it has to try to do that. But it's not at all clear that they can. You know, presidents love to imagine that they're very powerful. The only time you get them to see that they're not is when things go wrong, and then they don't want to be held accountable. But other than that, but they can't. I mean, I'm no friend of Mr. Trump's, but blaming him for all the noise and trouble that we already have and that we're going to have more of isn't really fair either. These are historical trends and developments that he can't do squat about. And lots of theatrics. I mean, he's great at that. He's wonderful. He's in the news. Now he's in the news in every country on earth. I spend a lot of time reading European and other newspapers, and he's almost as big a figure in a lot of other countries as he has been in ours. And for him, that's probably half the win he was looking for in the first place. But when you get this kind of, and this Scott Bessent, I mean, this is silly. A Wall Street guy, part of that whole community. He's absolutely right that they've been doing very, very well. They anticipate and want to do very well now. They don't care what he says as long as he takes it. Look, it's not good for Main Street to savage all the government offices. All those government federal offices, they mostly pump money into the local communities. It's what the federal government is mostly about anyway, other than the military. And even the military, in their way, support lots of local communities with the military bases and all the rest of it. So the federal government funds money. If you're going to help Main Street, this is not the way to do that. This is hurting Main Street in many, many ways. Their budgets will be limited. They were going to have new problems as the money drying up trickles down. There are going to be demands on the institutions that don't get the money to get from the local government what it is that they're missing. Their local government can't do it. You are offloading a large number of problems down below and crossing your fingers, if you're Mr. Bush, that when the excrement hits the cooling equipment, it'll be down the road a while.
Yeah,
you said Mr. Bush, but I think you meant Mr. Trump, which is an understandable, perhaps Freudian slip.
Yes.
What is it that Trump wants to get from all of this? Like, how does this enrich him? How does this enrich his friends? Is there something called? Can we call his economics Trumponomics? Is there like a uniting ideology?
No, there's nothing new here. It's what I said to you before. It's on steroids. The old Republican gambit, hyped up several notches. So it's different in that way. The intensity of, but you already know that about Trump, the racism, it's grotesque, Obama deported people, Biden deported people, but he's doing it with, on a bigger scale.
He's celebrating it.
And he's got that ugly man who I forget his name, the guy in charge of deporting people.
Oh, yeah, Homans,
to make it visual on top of all the other things. Other than that, it is, look, I think his two basic functions are that he would want to be remembered, that as the American empire was declining, he understood that after losing the war in Vietnam and losing the war in Afghanistan and losing the war in Iraq and now losing the war in Ukraine, maybe it's time to have a different approach, and now he wants to do it domestically too, that we are not what we were. And his great fear, which I hate to tell him, but he should be, is that it's too late. Can't be. They don't have as big a footprint as they did. You know what's, by the way, going to happen now for America? If the tariffs stay, every country on earth is now going to have the following logic. Goes back to what I told you about uncertainty. Don't deal with the United States. As minimum as possible, it's too unstable. It's too unclear. Yes, Mr. Trump will be out of office, I assume, at the end of his term, unless he gets another one, which he's talking about. But who comes next? Will it be another Trump type? Will it be the reversal? It's not even clear which of those is worse. You undo it all, and then what? You don't want to be in that position. What you want is a different trading partner. Europe wants to wean itself off of its interactions with the U.S. So does Asia, Africa, Latin America. And you know where they can go? Who's the other big economic power in the world beside the U.S.?
China.
You got it. And China will complain, but China is sitting there, unless I'm way off base, they're sitting quietly around their tea, laughing their heads off because Mr. Trump is reorganizing the world for them. It's not, he doesn't want to, it's not his goal, but that's what's going to happen. The Chinese are not throwing tariffs at anybody unless those people throw it at them. They're putting one on against the U.S. after the U.S. does it. They're very careful to choreograph, we don't do this, we won't do it, we're in favor of free trade, globalization, all of that. That's who we are. You don't have to worry. We're not going to be doing that. As long as they do that, and we're so uncertain here, we are organizing for them. A right-wing Democrat may run for office one day in the not-so-distant future and blast him on those grounds.
So on the topic of China, let's look at one of Trump's latest announcements. This is what he announced on social media. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the U.S. to 125% effective immediately. At the same time, Trump also announced that he's authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. So he's increasing the tariffs charged to China, but he's now announcing a 90-day pause, it looks like, for everybody else. Help us make sense of what he's doing here.
I'm mystified. In my wildest imagination, since I've just explained about uncertainty, I'm blown away by he cut it for everybody for 90 days. It's just incredible what he's doing. Beyond anything I can give you a rational answer for, because this is no longer a rational behavior pattern.
So incredible and incredibly stupid, incredibly
self-defeating.
Okay.
It's not even it undercuts any calculation. Even Jenny Diamond said, it's uncertain. If you heard him at the end, it's uncertain. He knows that the uncertainty is an issue. This is just revving up uncertainty by cutting it down, making it not effective for 90 days. Everybody has to wonder what happens at the end of 90 days. Another 30 days? Another 12 days? I mean, this is beyond words. But anyway, put it aside. China, here's the thing. You figured out late, and that's a whole conversation why that happened. But late, the United States figured out that China is the new world economic power. There's no other way to say that. I'll give you one statistic, just because you can hold it in your mind this way. In economics, we measure the size of an economy by something called the GDP, the gross domestic product. It's simply a measure of the total output of goods and services in one calendar year. So this country has X, that country has 2X. That country is twice as big a footprint in the world economy as the first one. Okay? The United States and its major allies, that's called the G7. The United States, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy. Those 7 countries together right now account for about 28%, more or less, of global output. So these 7 countries are 28% of the total product of this planet. Now we look at China and its allies. That is a thing called the BRICS, which now is about 22 countries, but the core group, the first 5 that formed it, were Russia, China, India, Brazil, and South Africa. But you take them together, you add up their GDPs, and they are 35% of the world's output. And if that statistic doesn't blow you away, here's one. The United States has 4.5% of the world's people. The BRICS alliance around China, 60% of the world's people. 60%, 4.5%, stop it. There is no question of where the world is going. In fact, there really is no question of where the world has already arrived. The United States, which could not believe over the last 25 years how fast China was growing, and I've been, since I was alive and active as an economist all that time, I can't tell you the number of seminars and panels and conferences where I've either given a paper or been on a panel or commented on it, where I had to deal with my fellow economists who were telling me, you can't trust the Chinese statistics, they make it up. Year after year, as the signs kept showing that they weren't making it up. Now they finally figured out. Under Obama, it started. It's too late. They want to slow China down. Everything they do, going after the Huawei Corporation a few years ago, I'm sure you noticed that, putting the tariffs on under Trump #1, and then, give you an example, the best electric vehicles in the world right now. Every engineer knows it. The best electric vehicles and the cheapest are made in China. They're made in China by a company there called BYD, 3 initials, BYD Corporation. By the way, stands for Build Your Dream. It's English, even though it's a Chinese company. They produce by far the best electric cars and trucks. If you go to Europe right now, you'll see them all over the road. You'll never see one in the United States. Why not? Because Mr. Biden raised Mr. Trump's tariff, which was 25%, against those things to 100%. So if you buy a $30,000 BYD electric car, you pay $30,000 goes to China for the car, and another $30,000, 100%, goes to Uncle Sam, costing you $60,000. So no one's going to do that. Everyone here can buy for $45,000 an inferior electric car made by Tesla or GM or Ford or any of the other, Toyota and the others. That's how this whole crazy quilt has been stop them, slow them, damage them. It's been going on now at least 10 years, by some counts, 15 or 20. It hasn't worked. China continues to grow faster. Here are the numbers for 2024, the last full year. The United States grew, if you believe all these numbers are from the International Monetary Fund, a Western institution. U.S. growth 2.8%, China's growth 5%, India's growth 7%. There's no contest here. It's been like that for 30 years, and there's no reason to believe otherwise. Can you damage the Chinese economy with these actions? Yes, you can. Will it cost them? Yes, it will. Is it going to change this basic picture? Not a chance. But it's very theatrical, and he will do it, and he hopes it'll work. And he hopes to tell them, like the two guys offering protection, I will take it away if you pay me. I will protect you. You got to pay. You got to give me something. And it better be dramatic so I can go across America and say, look what I got by threatening the whole world. Look, the world is, I can tell you from European newspapers, the United States is now the world's rogue country. That is the way they are conceptualizing it. They won't change their behavior. The Europeans will screw each other as they each of them fall over the other one trying to make a deal with Mr. Trump. Not understanding the old rule: if you don't hang together, you're going to hang separately. They don't, and that's the end for Europe. That's why Europe is disintegrating between the two poles of the U.S. and the G7 on the one hand, and China and the BRICS on the other. They can't overcome those differences. That's why Europe, from being the center of the world for thousands of years, is now becoming marginal. Before long, we're going to refer to Britain as a cold, wet island off the continent of Europe. That's come down a long way. And here's the irony of ironies. That's exactly what's happening to us. We're bigger, but it's not helping us. We are in really tough shape. And if I could urge anything on you, both of you, I know you do a lot of work and you're on a variety of programs. I see you all the time. This stuff needs what we're doing. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be explored. It needs to be questioned. Otherwise, the American people are just being led down the proverbial path here. And it's as horrible as the way people treat the Gaza issue or any of the, you're wading through the nonsense to try to get some kernel of understanding of what's going on.
Speaking of the Wall Street, Main Street divide, I wanted to ask you to react to another clip. This one is Jamie Dimon, head of JP Morgan Chase, appearing on Fox News. Let's listen. Let's hear what he had to say, what his prediction was.
Do you personally expect a recession?
I am going to defer to my economists at this point, but I think probably that's a likely outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because markets, I mean, when you see a 2,000-point decline, it sort of feeds on itself, doesn't it? Because it makes you feel like you're losing money in your 401k, you're losing money in your pension. You got to cut back.
Yeah. I always remind people markets aren't always right, but sometimes they are right. And I think this time they are right because they're just pricing in uncertainty at the macro level and uncertainty at the micro level, at the actual company level. And then how it affects consumer sentiment, it's hard to tell. Consumers still have jobs. Wages are going up at the low end, which I think is a good thing. But if companies start cutting back, the consumer sentiment changes and business sentiment changes. I think you've already seen business sentiment change a little bit. Hopefully, no one's wishing for that, but hopefully if there is one, it'll be short. But I do think fixing these tariff issues and trade issues would be a good thing to do.
So you also have predicted a recession. So you and Jamie Dimon could open up a consulting firm together. No, I jest, obviously. But what are your thoughts on his prediction?
And to hear the rest of the interview, please go to usefulidiotspodcast.com.
And that was the inimitable Richard Wolff. Make sure you watch the full interview at usefulidiotspodcast.com because you don't want to miss a minute of Professor Wolff and his Wolf bites, as he sometimes calls his analysis, gems or nuggets on Twitter. #Wolf bites.
All right, that's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, our website, usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show. Get bonus content. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For extended episodes, bonus content, and our weekly Thursday Throwdown episode, please subscribe at usefulidiotspodcast.com. Support the show for free by subscribing on YouTube, Rumble, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to rate and review. You can also follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod. Thanks for supporting independent media. We'll see you next time.